the LinkedIn isn't working. I have to figure out what happened to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Canadian Immigration Live Q&A hosted by the Canadian Immigration Institute. I am your host, Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, and I am here every Thursday at 11 a.m. with my co-host, Alicia Backman-Beharry. How are you, Alicia?
I'm well, Mark. It's December and the snow's fallen in Calgary, so it looks white and wintry out there.
I don't know what it's doing outside. Oh, no snow here, Alicia. No snow. I even though I'm sitting here in my room, I've often got the blinds pulled down, and so often I don't even know what the weather's looking like outside. So hopefully, whoops, there. I turned my light off there. I'm glad that there's no snow yet. That's one positive. All right. Well, we're grateful to have everybody joining with us. We don't have any big major announcements or anything massive to share. Those of you who attended the live Q&A that was supposed to be at 10 yesterday, that was my time on Wednesdays. I was in meetings with immigration all day. So as a table officer, I'm the immediate past chair for the Canadian Bar Association. We had meetings with immigration, the various departments, all day yesterday. And the Consultant Association had representatives there. Acadie, the Quebec immigration lawyers, had representatives. And so it was our annual IRCC immigration practitioner call. And it was excellent. Alicia, we had a chance to get a sneak peek even at what, at the interface, the officers, the intake officers use when they are doing completeness checks. So we actually got a look at the portal where they log in. We got to see how they view things and how things are allocated between team leads. And they really pulled the curtains back and showed us how the process works on their side. And they're really, really trying to set things up so that it's as efficient as possible. And so they assign files to the officers and the whole system. And Deloitte is the developer of all of it. So if you guys want someone to blame Deloitte for all of the portals and everything that's going on there. I shouldn't say all of them because they use a variety. Some are built in-house. Some are built by external contractors like Deloitte. So so it's been very, very interesting to see as they've shared a lot of information with us. We talked about a couple other things. One on our hit list, Alicia, was something we call misrepresentation. And our Halloween special that Alicia and I did a couple weeks ago, that misrepresentation video, you guys really need to check it out if you haven't had a chance to do that, because this is a major, major issue that we're seeing so frequently now with our clients. And immigration is cruel. They have access to all this data now that they never used to before. They have the ability to look into the history that you've had in your country, in other countries, the UK, the US, New Zealand, Australia, especially. They can just access your whole history, and vice versa. If you're applying for those countries, there's information sharing agreements like we talk about in our video. And so I'm just going to flip over here and just to remind everybody, let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Let's shift the screen over. There we go. And so when you guys go to the YouTube, and you could probably find it on Facebook or Twitter, but this is probably the easiest way to find it. Right here, this video, if you have not watched it, I know it's long because we had a very long Q&A after, but the initial part, we spend a lot of time talking about all of the different ways that things can go sideways for you guys. And you have to take it serious because immigration, the moment they have anything that they consider a misrep, boom, they, 5-year bar and your dream of coming to Canada is over. And I literally just finished a consultation with someone who had, they'd made some mistakes in their TRPR pathway. And the reality is they weren't eligible for it at all. And but then after watching our video, Alicia, they then started freaking out, which that's not our intention to have people freak out, but we do want them to be alert and attentive to these issues. And obviously, it's way, way more difficult to realize you've made a mistake after you've submitted your application than to come and see Alicia and myself, Chanel or Susan, to make sure it's done right the first time and that these things can be caught. So yeah, it was quite an eventful day. And we talked all about the problems with portals. We talked about the Afghan crisis. We talked about the prioritization that cabinet really has placed on the Afghan crisis. And so a lot of the resources, you guys, that would normally be used to assisting you with processing applications, they're just not there because they've been assigned to the Afghan issue. And just so that you guys can understand this is a situation where they're dealing with literally life and death matters. And for anyone who's stuck in the queues, it can be so painful, so awful. But they've made a decision that in this case, human life is the priority. And so they will have 20 communications from one person over the course of a day as they have, as they're tracking them, as they go from hiding from one place to trying to get to the border, to try to get out of Afghanistan, to then in another country. And so they have made a conscious decision that they're going to offer 24-hour support to people that are inquiring, that need help and are in these desperate situations. And it's really hard because when you do that, you only have so many officers. And when they're allocated to giving this as a priority, something has to give. And that's what you're seeing. That's why you receive these generic responses when you try to submit a web form, or the call center won't talk to you unless it's a crisis situation. And even when it comes to processing applications, yes, it does have a little bit of an effect on that. As they've gone through and are now trying to process the actual landing of people that have been identified and selected through the refugee systems that are in place to allow these Afghan citizens and those who are stuck in this crisis to find a pathway to Canada. So,
And I think it's
go ahead.
worth pointing out, Mark, too, that we talk about misrep and we talk about the officers assigned to look at misrep, and then we're talking about some other processing officers. And there's a difference within immigration. So immigration is actually bifurcated. There are CBSA officers, Canada Border Services Agency officers, and those are the people that are looking at generally taking people out, right? They are looking at enforcement and they are looking at finding misrepresentation. They are looking at writing those letters, procedural fairness letters, to sometimes take people out depending on the type of application. But that's a separate department than the IRCC officers. And sometimes people get a little bit confused about who does what within the departments. So there are a few differences in terms of they can still pursue misrep and they can still pursue removals and inadmissibility. And at the same time, on the IRCC intake side, the processing side, those officers might be tied up with the Afghan crisis. So,
Yep, absolutely. And even within the process, there are specific, when you're filing your applications on the intake side, those aren't the officers that actually adjudicate the application. So the ones that are determining whether or not a file is complete and the acknowledgement of receipt is being issued. Now, obviously within express entry, it's pretty automated, but that whole process, those officers are different than the ones that are actually adjudicating. And so sometimes those initial officers make mistakes. So it's an interesting world. It's just this mosaic of all these different organizations. I think I also talked about the fact we're doing all of our meetings. So the Foreign Worker Program, ESDC, we had meetings with them last week. The border officers, like Alicia indicated, CBSA, which is also enforcement for immigration. We met with them on Friday of last week, discussing some of the big picture issues. And we've got what's Omicron? Is that what it's called? This new variant that Igor and I last night, if you watched the live Q&A that we did last night at the beginning, we went over in detail what the current state of the world is in terms of those that are looking to travel to Canada. So go back and watch that one as well. All right, let's say hello to the people that have been jumping in here. And so we've got PSJ from Surrey, and Kartik says, any slight chance of flight ban from India to Canada? Well, that's a good question, Kartik. I think you're going to need to monitor. We're all going to need to monitor this list of countries that are on banned lists. And you've seen with the Delta variant that arose in India. Canada is very quick to shut down all travel from countries where just to try to limit the spread of these highly contagious variants. And so at this stage, India is not on that list, but we'll just have to see what happens as things kind of continue forward and spread. Okay, I'll let you answer that one, Alicia. So any updates on express entry draw, CEC, or all program draws? What do you think?
No updates on CEC. Definitely no all program draws. So nothing this year, guys. Not a single one under FSW all year, and it doesn't look likely for the rest of the month.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair statement. We don't know. We believe that Q1 quarter, the first quarter of next year, they're going to do it. But one of the videos and one of the blog posts that Alicia is working on right now is to give advice to all of you international students who are now on postgrad work permits, who've been waiting for rounds of invitations, who have been waiting for a CEC draw or even an open draw because your scores are high, but now your work permits are running out. And this is something that we're getting a lot of calls with. A lot of consultations are being booked with individuals who are wondering, well, what do I do? And so Alicia's going to be releasing a blog post on this, and we're going to have a special live on this topic that we'll promote. But you'll definitely want to watch for that. And for those of you, we'll just flip over here to our website. At the top here, you can see you can just click on resources and then blogs. And there's a growing database of really, really good resources that you can access here that cover everything from spousals to students to misrepresentation. And there's links and other things that, those of you who would like to read, the blog posts are here for your, for your support. So go and check those out. And those are constantly growing. We're constantly adding to this. And it's just one more avenue that we've created to help give information so that you guys can make the right decisions at the right time. There's nothing worse than people booking consults with us, and Alicia can attest to this, and it's too late. There's nothing that we can do to fix the situation, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we've got Shaw. Big shout out to Shaw, who's in Ottawa. We've got Samir. Good evening to you from the UK. Lucas. Hola, Lucas. ¿Cómo está, amigo mío? So Lucas is over in Brazil. And let's see what else we've got here. Isab is in Mexico City. Bobby is over in Kenya. And I don't think Kenya is on the list yet. So we know that Nigeria is, but I didn't see Kenya on that ban list yet. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. And PSJ says thoughts about Omicron and Canada banning countries. And I think we've had a little bit of a discussion about that. But Alicia, do you have any thoughts on that? You've been kind of our go-to for border issues and travel restrictions and quarantining and things like that. But what are your thoughts on this and the position that Canada has taken with these country bans?
Yeah. And I mean, I was looking at the WHO guidance on this too, because there was a good BBC article recently just saying, do travel bans work? And generally, I think the international policy is try not to do blanket bans if possible. If you can target the specific countries or if you can isolate and test, that's generally seeming to be more effective, just to buy countries some time to try to make sure that they understand what's happening with these new variants and that they can try to contain the spread and make sure that Canada's public health care system doesn't just buckle under what happens in our emergency wards. So I think really they're trying to stay open as much as they can, but they also have a responsibility to protect public health and safety. And so this is that fine balancing line. And so right now there's they're not shutting down all the international airports, but they are saying where there's countries that have high rates of the new variant, they're just going to close it down for those countries. Canadians can still enter, but even Canadians now who are fully vaccinated will have to take that test and will have to self-isolate until they get the results back. So
Yep.
it's possible, yeah, it's possible that there will be more bans because, in the space of a day it was 7 and it went to 10, right? So it's an evolving situation.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to Sean. He says, hello, Mark and Alicia. Good to have you joining us, Sean. Darsh says, good afternoon. Let's see here. So we got a question. I don't know, Alicia, is this Mandarin, Cantonese? I'm not sure what it is. Japanese. So when do you expect IRCC to clear all FSW backlogs?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they will ever clear all backlogs. Maybe they'll clear FSW backlogs, but
Yeah.
it seems to be a cycle that's ongoing right now. So yes, there's for sure an FSW backlog. There were no draws under FSW all of 2021. There were a few in the back end of 2020. But there's a lot of people that are out there that are waiting, and it's hard. My heart goes out to all of those of you who have lives on hold and trying to figure out what to do, and it's a difficult situation. But they do have a program processing standard of 6 months. However, I don't think they've been able to meet that, and they just say that there's extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Pargeet is over in Halifax. Great to have you connecting. Okay. So Darsha's got a postgrad question. Can a postgrad work permit holder apply for a study permit and study part-time while gaining full-time work experience for CEC? This is an issue that we have looked at, Darsh, and we have our thoughts. There's Alicia, do you want to give our updated kind of firm position on this?
Sure. So a lot of people don't realize that you can only have one postgrad work permit. So once you get that postgrad work permit, that's it, that's all, unless you happen to have a passport that expired early and that's why you didn't get the full duration. So you've got your one-time postgrad work permit. You are able to apply for another study permit, so that's okay. And during the course of your active studies, you are authorized to study part-time as long as you're studying under the parameters of 186 sub V of the Immigration Refugee Protection Regulations. However, when you look at what qualifies as full-time work experience for CEC, this is where it gets interesting because the ministerial instructions give a specific definition. And I actually wrote a whole blog post about this, and it's on our blog about, what work experience can you count for CEC? What counts for CEC? So that's on there. And the conservative interpretation, what work experience can you claim for your Canadian experience class application? And if you go there, I actually have the links directly to the ministerial instructions themselves. And the provision in the ministerial instructions says that you cannot claim Canadian work experience while you are studying full time. And so the conservative interpretation is no, you're authorized to still work, but you can't claim that work as Canadian work experience for the purposes of your CEC score.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Alicia. See you guys. There's lots of avenues available to you. Okay. Kush says, and this is a study permit processing issue, which I don't think Alicia or I are going to be able to respond to, but he says he submitted, and I'm assuming this is a study permit application, October 24th for January intake. That's really, really late. And obviously depends, Kush, on your country that you're applying from. I'm assuming India, Pakistan, possibly. Will I get my passport request before my class start 10th of January? And it's like, I'll be honest, they have lots of applications that they're trying to process. And I can't answer that, Alicia. Like I know that they try to do the best that they can to process, but yeah. And interestingly, on Thursday, a week from today at 3 p.m., 3:30, you'll see, I'll put up the notification, but you'll remember that Will Tao and I, in a previous video on Immigration Nation, talked about the Chinook system, which is, we also discussed yesterday, which effectively is the way that officers can batch process many, many study permit applications or other temporary applications, or they're expanding it to a lot of different things, excuse me, in a way that just allows them to make decisions faster. And anytime you want speed or efficiency, you guys, and I know a lot of you are really, really bent on that, the reality is it can have a significant impact on the approval rates or the rejection rates. So tune in next Thursday for that one, and we'll try to pull the curtain back further on this Chinook system. Immigration doesn't feel like there's anything wrong with it, but there's a federal court case working its way through the system, and immigration is using this to test their system, whether or not they can actually use it. And that's the reality. So depending on what the courts ultimately decide as to the fairness of this process, it will dictate how far they carry it forward. They're in the process of setting up a cloud-based version of this, that's accessible to officers all over. Obviously they like it. So, so technically Kush, they're putting things in place to make applications to approve quickly, and reject quickly. So I don't know, any
Yeah,
thoughts,
and that's
Alicia?
yeah, one thing to add to that too is it really depends if the application was through SDS or not. So the student direct stream is only available for certain residents of certain countries. If it is through SDS, generally on their website, they're saying their processing timelines are 20 business days. However, if you're looking at a general study permit application, then I mean, I think I checked 2 days ago and it was over 13 weeks. So it really makes a difference if it was under SDS or not.
Yeah. And I'll just go over here and I'll flip this open. I'm pretty sure everyone that's watching this is well aware of how to access the immigration processing times, IRCC processing times. But when you look at, this is the challenge. So when we go here and we select temporary residence studying, and then study visa from outside Canada, you can see that they used to distinguish by visa office, but they don't do that anymore. So right now, as of, and this was last updated just 2 days ago, they're listing it at 13 weeks. So that can be a little bit of a guideline for you. And we know that with online filing, they can process applications pretty much anywhere where they have capacity. So that's one good thing, unlike some of the paper-based, but you still need a visa in your passport, right? And that's one of the challenges. And that's why certain countries have slower finalization and the passport requests, like you've identified, Kush. Okay. So Tejas Feet says, are they even processing FSW Outlanders, especially from India? Maybe I can
Yeah,
jump into that one, Alicia, too. We know they are, you guys, but the reality is there's all kinds of things happening in India. In fact, I think some people have brought up the fact that the booking of the biometrics and things like that, there's a little bit of corruption in that process right now. And we were in the process of forming a working group with the CBA to identify the issue and report to IRCC. Just the fact that some agents are scooping up those appointment dates and then are basically charging a premium. And I'm not sure how they're doing it to get access to them. So they're booking out, you can't even book, until for months in advance. And so we've brought that up, and it actually came up in one of our last immigration meetings, and they were quite surprised, immigration was, to know that that was happening. So if you guys hear anything about this craziness that happens overseas, corruption, scams, anything like that, I personally love to hear that. And all you need to do is just send an email to info@holthelaw.com. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about the crazy things that you're seeing out there. I'm just going to pull this up here. Oh, let's see where it is here. Just give me a second. Get it up where people can see it. Oh, I'm trying to share it. I was going to share the email address here, Alicia, but apparently I won't be doing that. I'm not sure why it's not working.
and it is worthwhile
Anyways.
noting too that immigration does have an anti-fraud department also. So, if there's something that's going on and you guys have specific details, then you might as well notify immigration and tell them that, you think that there could be something fraudulent happening.
Mm-hmm. There it is. So you can send an email to info@holthelaw.com, and I may even bring it up in my next immigration news update. So take that into consideration. Okay. All right. So yes, they're processing, and it's just going really slow, you guys.
And that's part of the reason, though, why they're not actually doing further FSW draws is because they're processing the ones that were in from before.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Aban says, I live in India. I got my LMIA more than a year ago and work permit 2 months. So we have applied for PR and express entry. It's more than a year. We've applied PR. So when can we get PR? Yeah. Aban, you're in the vortex. And yeah, Alicia and I, neither of us can give you an answer on that front. Okay. And then Darsh, we've already answered yours there. Okay. Kartik says, can a wrong parent's date of birth by just 4 days for approved application be counted as misrepresentation? What are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
I mean, Kartik, it's really going to depend. Like, why is your parents' birthday wrong? And, what documentation did it have? Which applications have you submitted with that wrong birth date? Um, Sometimes, I mean, immigration gets concerned about proof of identity and making sure that everything is properly lined up. And if there's something wrong with the parent's birthday, they'll want to know why. And if it's something that's a brand new change, or like if you've submitted a different birthday in the past on a different application, why is there a discrepancy? So there's a little bit more that you'd probably need to dig into about the facts and circumstances of this in order to be able to give an opinion.
Yeah, and that's a fair statement. And usually, what we do is we ring this little bell right here, and then we direct you guys over here to book a consult. And we do this a lot for a simple reason. And the reason we point people to book consultations is because in the context of these little comments that you post, general questions that are applicable to everybody watching is really what we're focused on here, trying to give as much help, much information as we possibly can about the process, shedding light on what's happening in the background, things of a general nature that benefit everyone. But when it gets down to your specific situations, especially for you, Kartik, like it really comes down to the full picture, what was exactly put in there. And like Alicia said, what is the background and why? Because that plays a role in determining whether or not, it's fixable, I guess is the best way to describe it, or how likely it is that immigration is going to find misrepresentation. So, yeah. So if you have any further questions or you're not sure, don't hesitate to slide over here and book a consult with Alicia and myself. We would be delighted to connect with you and help you in any way. And remember, we've got myself, and Chanel is here as well, and Susan. So there's lots of choices for you guys, especially if one of us is full. Yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
The other thing generally is just that, if you do have an approved application and you notice an error on something, then if you have not yet landed or you've not yet come to Canada, you can still do that web form inquiry and make sure to correct that error. If you are standing at the border and you've got your document and they're asking you if everything's correct and you notice a mistake, make sure to say, wait, there's a mistake on here. Get it corrected even in handwritten version. And then you've done your due diligence to inform immigration of what the accurate state of affairs is.
Yep. And when you land, things are locked in. And then, and within the context of misrepresentation and everything associated with it, there's a whole body of law that is really, really cruel, is the best way of describing it. But one of the more cruel provisions in the Act is Section 117(9)D of the regulations. And that kind of also fits in because there are inabilities to request humanitarian and compassionate exemptions. And there's a whole broad body of law related to those issues. And it's really legal. And sometimes when we are retained and you slide over and you book a consultation with Alicia, the consult is a great opportunity to connect and to talk and provide us with the facts. But in many cases, you guys, there's legal research that we need to do, looking at the case law, federal court decisions, and really seeing how things are interpreted as to whether or not we think you've got a shot of saving it, or whether it's really not going to be an issue. So, all right. So we've got Jojo over in India. Hello, Jojo. Majda is in Algeria. Okay, that's the good thing about my choice of bringing people in, so I don't have to share everyone's comments. Be kind to each other. Be kind to each other. Okay, let's see here. So yeah, and I think we already had that question too. When do you expect IRCC to clear the backlog? 2022, Q2, Q3. Guys, this backlog is going to be there for a while. And remember, it's a constant state of applications in and applications out. And so it's not like, this backlog is just going to be cleared in a day. It will take a long time. But when things like the Afghan crisis start to settle down a little bit, officers can be reallocated. They are processing a ton of applications. And I think some of you have watched CIC News and the reports that they had. And just in terms of the volumes of applications that are being processed, 35, almost 40,000, I think, for September and October. And so they're working on it. Okay, we've got Jal over in the Philippines. Hello. The Sura says, hello, Mark and Alicia. I was up till 4 a.m. yesterday, but fell asleep 30 minutes before you're live. Oh, that's all right, my friend. It's all good. Igor and I yesterday, we did it. We did it at 3 p.m. because I had those meetings, and we did it as soon as my meetings were done. We did that. Okay, Edwin, this looks like a tricky one, Alicia. I'm not sure if we can address this one. Just asking if HIV positive individuals can work in Canada. Is it also located, just bring the medication for the entire duration of stay, example, to your supply? And absolutely, I'm going to ring this bell right here, Edwin, because this is a super, the short answer is yes, it may be possible. Absolutely, to come and work. I know because we had a consultation earlier this week. Chanel is working with someone who's in this situation. And so yes is the short answer, but the long answer is whether that applies directly to you. There are a ton of different factors. And so I strongly encourage you to book a consult and let us look at things with you collectively. Do you have a job offer right now? Is there an LMIA? Are you applying through, to transition from a student to a worker? The context is really important here.
Also, just generally, so immigration has medical conditions as a general condition on all work permits that people, unless you've passed a medical exam, cannot work in healthcare or in vulnerable sectors. And so if you're working with children or the elderly, there's a general prohibition on most people's work permits that you can't do that. So not authorized to work in healthcare or with the elderly or anything that involves vulnerable individuals unless you've passed a medical exam and have been cleared, and then they can remove that condition on your work permit. So that's kind of a general thing. The other thing that I would caution about is there are very specific rules about medication, and you should check into further, how much prescription medication is possible to bring in. But I suspect that it's going to be a much shorter time period than 2 years. I think generally it's about 6 months, but that is something to follow up and look specifically at.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Isab. Actually, here, let me show his previous comment. Guys, I will never guarantee that I will answer everybody's question. So if I miss it, sometimes maybe it doesn't even appear for me. I think they all should appear. Sometimes if the question is too long, I skip through it. If the question is really specific, I skip through it. So let's answer your question because you're respectful. So here we go. So he says, are you seeing more COPRs being issued to Outland PNP applicants? Express entry AOR is December 20th. Biometrics taken last week. Now appears completed on my profile. Thanks, Isab. This is actually something that we can't answer. So are we seeing more COPRs being issued to just Outland PNP applicants? No, the answer is no. The processing is continued forward. Yes, am I seeing PNPs? Yes, I am. Absolutely. We're seeing those rounds of invitations, but individuals that have had their applications in the queue, there is no incentive whatsoever for IRCC to not process your applications. It's just that things are going extremely slow. And you talked about December 2020 as being when you got your AOR. Well, I think you've seen what's happened in the past. The ones that I've seen, they're probably the beginning of 2020 right now, not the end. So we're talking maybe January, February of that big backlog of FSWs. So so that's my response on that one. Alicia, I don't know if you have anything to add on that one.
I mean, if they're only getting around to biometrics now, at least they're processing, right? At least they're moving forward on it, but they may have a while to still do those security and background checks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so we've got a question from Chaitanya. He says, hey, Mark, should I wait for IRCC to send my refund for the TRPR or should I request a refund? I send the web form and it said it will result in refusal. Okay, Chaitanya, I'm not quite sure. With the TRPR pathway, the way that you request, well, you just request the refund, and that's the way that you cancel the application. You're in your situation here, Chaitanya. Just to put into context here, we've had lots of discussions because he's engaged us for other purposes here. Yeah, understand that web form that you're getting back is a generic scare. It basically says if you request a refund, your application will be canceled. So Chaitanya, send me an email, okay? And we'll and I'll address that separately. So just send me an email, my friend. I'm not quite sure exactly what Chaitanya is asking there. Okay, Jamie says, can I work full-time if I have both a study permit and a postgrad permit? Okay. I'm on a postgrad right now, but have gotten into a master's program. So I know we addressed this in detail, but just to kind of recap, Alicia, what are your thoughts on that one?
So if you've got that postgrad work permit, it's an open work permit. You're allowed to work in any occupation inside of Canada. However, if you want it to be credited towards your Canadian work experience, a few things have to happen. It's got to be a high-skilled job, so knock A, B, or zero. And if you are studying full-time in a master's program, the risk is that immigration is going to say you can't count full-time work experience. You can't be working full-time on that postgrad work permit and studying full-time in order for it to count for Canadian experience work in Canada. So yes, you're authorized to work, but if you want that work to count towards CEC, you can't claim it.
Yeah. And that's, we've looked at that. Neither Alicia nor I have seen any direct federal court cases on this topic, but we will, in every instance, provide conservative legal advice, and we would rather have someone not work, not go back to school full time so that they continue to claim the Canadian work experience, versus say, oh yeah, it's fine, and then they go to apply for express entry through CEC, and then IRCC doesn't recognize the work history. So understand, with this advice, this is the position that we've taken as a firm in terms of this. There may be other people that say, oh no, it's just fine. Well, hey, good, they can tell you that. But for us, when you read the legislation, you give it a plain reading, the way it's worded, it does not appear to authorize that. So yes.
Yeah, the risk is too great, right? So if you only have that one PGWP and that's the year, or that's the 2 years, or that's the 3 years that you have in order to gain your work experience in Canada, if you lose out on that time period, then you have to go and find an employer who's going to give you an LMIA to get another work permit, which is really tough.
Yeah. All right. So Kartik says, okay, so I have an approved study permit. It was just a mistake while filling in his father's date of birth by 4 days in the family information. He said, I didn't provide any proof of the date of birth. He's landed at December 15th. So let's see, he's landing, it looks like December 15th. If I disclose, will they return me? So this is in the context of a study permit. So this is something, understand that neither Alicia nor I can tell you 100% what an officer at the border is going to do. You've got an approved study permit. If you were my client and you said, okay, what should I do? I would tell you to let the officer know. And I can guarantee that the officer, well, I shouldn't say guarantee. It would be exceptionally rare that an officer would somehow, do anything other than issue you the study permit. Is there, can anything happen at a port of entry? Yes, it can, Kartik. But I think the likelihood of an officer having any issue with that is extremely, extremely low. This is purely a clerical mistake, right? And so obviously you want to try to correct and make sure that all the information that you're providing is correct. But this here is, I think this is something that isn't going to result in a 5-year bar. But Alicia, you tell me what your thoughts are on that.
So two things. The first is that for it to be misrepresentation, it's got to be an error that induces or could induce an error in the administration of the act. And so if it closes a line of questioning off for that officer, or if they, I don't know, maybe your parent is actually somebody with this nasty criminal history, and they would have found your parent if you had disclosed their proper date of birth, and then you're inadmissible because they're inadmissible, that's something possible. But if it's nothing like that and it's just a clerical error, then make sure to fix it. Because the other second thing is, if you ever wanted to put in a or not a study permit, a super visa application for your parent, to have them come and be with you in Canada, or if you want to try to sponsor them at any point in the future and immigration has records that are wrong with their birth date, you're going to need to fix that, because you don't want to have a discrepancy in your parent's birth date for that reason.
Excellent. All right. Samreen says, I'm on a postgrad work permit. I applied to the TRPR and then later applied for a study permit. Is this allowed? Does it look bad to IRCC?
And I think, just like you said, Mark, I'm going to be writing that blog article because I think there's a lot of people who are getting a little bit desperate now, right? Their postgrad work permit is starting to expire. They're waiting on their TR to PR, and now they're saying, well, I better have a backup plan because my work permit's going to expire. And so maybe they're going to shift to a study permit. So yes, it is possible to shift to a study permit. You have an obligation under the TR to PR to maintain valid temporary residence status at the time the application is submitted and when it gets processed. And you don't know when it's going to get processed. So if your PGWP is going to expire and hopefully you're going to get approved into a designated learning institution, and hopefully you've got that study permit in there, and if that's your only option, then maybe that's what you need to do to maintain your status in Canada.
Yeah. And I'll also add something. We get lots of questions from people. If I have this situation in my personal history, like I'm unemployed, or I've been working in occupations that aren't related to my education, does this look bad for IRCC? Do they think less of me, right? Or is this somehow going to affect whether or not they would be willing to approve the application? So understand that officers, their opinion of you really doesn't matter too much when it comes to, anything outside of the actual parameters of eligibility for the program you're applying through. So, if someone, had their dog run over by a dishwasher repairman. Yes, that was me. It was so sad. And yeah, it was sad, Alicia. It was a sad day. And then as a kid, and then as an officer, I say, oh, I hate dishwasher repairmen. This person has a dishwasher repairman knock code. I'm not going to approve this application, right? Like, that's absurd. But what we're talking about here is officers, they don't think that way. As long as you meet the eligibility requirements, you're not inadmissible, then they approve, right? And so in the case of the TR to PR pathway, the question that you're really asking is, if I am on a postgrad and then I shift back to a study permit, will that somehow make me ineligible for the TR to PR? And the answer is no. The only requirement with the TR to PR pathway is that you have valid status in Canada at the time in which you have that application finalized. In the case of essential workers, you had to have demonstrated that you had that 1 year of work experience, right? And even if that position changed or you flipped to a visitor status, that doesn't disqualify you or make you ineligible for the TR to PR pathway. And so those are some things to put into context. And yes, watch for Alicia's blog. She'll address probably things you guys haven't even thought of, but there's a lot of challenges with this. And, just a little bit of a sneak peek. The question is, I can bridge. With the 90 days after my work permit expires, if I get the ITA and there's a round of invitations, I can do a bridging open work permit application to restore my status as a worker. And so,
But only if you've submitted that application.
Yes. So if you've got your EAPR that you've filed and you've got your acknowledgement of receipt, right? There's the possibility that maybe you could do that. Or is it better to not fall out of status and just transition to a visitor status? Even falling out of status, sometimes you might be applying for a visa to another country. Have you ever been without status in another country? I don't know if they ask that. The answer would have to be yes if you let yourself fall out of status. Or do you choose to return home because you've got your 1 year of CEC? You can't work. You don't want to twiddle your thumbs in Canada. So you decide, well, I'm just going to go home for now because my work permit, my postgrad's expiring and there hasn't been a round of invitations. So there's all of these possibilities and probably more. And that's what we're going to try to tackle in this upcoming blog post. But every person's situation is different. And that's really the gist of what we do as immigration lawyers, is to assess your situation. We don't care what everybody else does or how immigration has treated them. We care about you and your specific circumstances. And then we use our legal expertise to analyze the law, analyze the policy, the facts, and then give you advice based on all of the information that is available.
And just a couple important things. So TR to PR, yeah, you can't be careful, right? Because you have to still hold status. In general, though, in different circumstances, people do ask, well, wait a minute, a study permit is a temporary residence permit, right? It's a way to maintain your status in Canada temporarily, but not for permanent residency. Whereas the TR to PR is a permanent residence application. And so this is where we talk about dual intent. And so it is true that for study permit applications in general, you always still have to prove that temporary intent. You still have to prove that there's a legitimate way that you could go back to your home country if required to do so. And so this is where, does it look bad? Well, this is where you still have to prove the temporary intent aspect. But you are able to say, hey, I have a dual intent. I have submitted my TR to PR application, but I also will abide by Canada's immigration rules and leave if I have to.
Yeah. So you guys can see we could spend a whole hour session, a live session, just talking about this topic, and we will specifically address this. So stay tuned and watch for it. Make sure that for YouTube, especially, that you subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified when we go live, especially like last night or yesterday afternoon when Igor and I went on to talk a little bit about the travel restrictions and to do that Q&A. Sometimes things come up in our practices, and I usually am very, very careful not to let things jump in and interfere. But sometimes if the border's calling, if someone's got trapped at the border, or if there's a call from immigration, one of the visa offices, obviously I drop whatever I do to take those calls, especially now when they're at a premium and where very rarely do we have opportunities to speak to officers. Sometimes those things come up and Alicia and I may not be available. So make sure that you subscribe and like the video, and then you can get notified if we do a surprise little video. Okay, Tanya says, hey, considering the present scenario, can an AOR January 2021 FSW still expect something till March? And meds expired 5th of January. Okay. I love this. Okay. So medicals expired January the 5th, I think. Upfront medical recommended or not. Not sure if you can sort through that one. Alicia, do you know what she's asking here?
Yeah, I'm thinking she's just asking, do I do another medical because the current ones expire and she had AOR from the beginning of January. So yeah, I would say if in doubt, it's the one thing that you can do. You do have to pay another fee, and sometimes immigration will say, oh, it's okay, we can use that old medical, or it's close to the end and they will extend it. But to be safe, if you can book that upfront medical and just make sure that you go to a panel physician that's on the list and then do that medical, it'll be there in their system and they don't have to pause everything to then ask you to give that medical instruction letter and give you 30 days to go do it again. So you might as well, if it has a chance of making it a little bit easier on the back end, then go for it.
You bet. And then Chaitanya is just confirming here that, and you guys have to understand too, that sometimes when people are our clients, that's not our information to share. So Chaitanya, we worked with him to get his PR, big smiles there. And he said his TR to PR is pointless. Yes. So he had multiple applications in the queue. So just want to know if I should apply for a refund or just wait for it to show up. Go ahead and apply. Yeah. There's no problems with that at all, Chaitanya. Okay. Kartik says here, trust me, my father is not a gangster. Great to know. I'm thinking to update the mistake while I apply for my postgrad, or if my dad applied for a visit visa before, is it okay? Well, like you said, Kartik, we've kind of given you our thoughts on it. We always like to correct mistakes as soon as possible. We don't like to wait ever. And so you'll have to make that decision yourself. Our advice is to always try to update and correct things in advance. It's a whole lot easier to do that than to explain why you made the mistake or why you didn't correct it in a subsequent application.
Yeah, there's a section in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act and regs that says you have an obligation to be truthful. And so
Yep.
if you're standing in front of an officer and you know that there's something wrong, you have an obligation to be truthful.
Yep. And that's the only advice that we can give you. Okay. Havarius says, I forgot my transcript in my TR2PR documents. Planning to upload through the web form. Should I select replace document or express entry? There is no TR2PR option. So this is something that it's a known issue, and IRCC has done this on purpose. Now, one of the things, obviously when they're assessing, the completeness part, you haven't indicated if you've submitted your degree or diploma. So, or some other proof of graduation. They have shown a willingness to be somewhat flexible with that if you have provided evidence. And I haven't seen too many people getting their TR2PR applications refused if they have other things that they've submitted. Individuals that have tried to do it without submitting anything, yeah, that's pretty fatal. But we've seen a real willingness of those officers when it's not something that goes to the core of eligibility. They have been willing to show a little bit of mercy. Now, in terms of updating, even though they say don't send us anything, until they figure out something a little bit better, I'm still going to send it to them anyways and keep it as a record or protection for myself in the event I have to go to a judicial review. And so if I have to challenge some refusal, well, for them to say, no, we're not going to let you correct or update your file. Well, that's not how TR2PR pathway works. It's not like express entry. And so, so as far as the web form, it doesn't matter what you choose. If you choose replace or express entry, there is no TR2PR option. Just make sure that you've provided as much identification within your description field, your passport number, your UCI number, anything else that you have to help them match what you're giving with the ultimate file number when your TR2PR AOR is received. So, so that's kind of the advice. Anything to add, Alicia, on that one?
Screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. So make sure that, you could take a screenshot of the fact that you submitted your TR to PR. Hopefully you've got some evidence that it was actually submitted. Combine that, because it only lets you upload one document per web form. You've got to have a 4 megabyte limit. So you combine that with your transcripts and the other, hopefully you put in that degree or diploma to make sure that it fit the program requirements, but upload that and make sure that you take a screenshot of everything to record the date and the time that you actually sent that to immigration.
Yes. Okay, Sumit says, I withdrawed my file due to some mistakes, then resubmitted with corrections. Recently, I got the application number and it was linked, it looks like, for the one that I withdrew. So, Sumit, my friend, this is part of the portal gong show that we're dealing with. The inability of officers to update files in a timely fashion. This is just a product of it. So the only thing that I can do is just ring the bell and just have you book a consult with us so that we can see if we can help you sort this out. Because we see this so often, just major problems. Okay. Sofgut says, CEC AOR 24. Okay. Medical and criminality passed. Security not started. Can't calm my nerves. Is it normal processing timeline? Yeah. So you can see here, I'm looking here. So AOR, I don't think we have even a month or anything here to go off of. It's got to be normal.
24.
If it's crazy, right? If it's crazy, you're confused, you're not sure where things are at. Well, you're pretty much normal. So pretty much everybody consider themselves normal processing. As long as you've done everything right, take a deep breath in, say, hey, we're all in this together, and just ride it out. And I think even of, how many times we've had, sorry, it's hard to kind of not chuckle, but poor Chaitanya here. So many times he even has posted comments because he received the initial request for him to provide his email to set up the login so he could do his e-Coper landing. And then there was nothing, silence, right, Chaitanya? It was literally, I think, 13 or 14 days before they finally sent him the information to set up his landing portal. And so, yeah, this is not a normal world we're in, you guys. And, just look around and you can see everybody else that's in the same type of a situation. Okay. Tanya says, can we still expect the passport request till March? So AOR January of 21. You know what, guys? I would not count on it. Anything can happen. It can. But FSW Outlanders, I think things are still going to go a little bit slower. And, it's not unusual for Outland. And we don't know exactly what country. Maybe you're in India, maybe you're Pakistan. But January the 21st for an AOR. Yeah, we're seeing these ones because there's a lot of people ahead of you, right? The people that have kind of are stuck in the queue, all the 2020s are still being processed. So I think it probably March could be, but I think it's a stretch. What do you think, Alicia?
Yeah, I'd say, just do your best to get those medicals and make sure everything else is updated. If there's changes in your files, notify them. But yeah, don't hang your head on getting in March. If there's anything else that you can do to kind of prolong your time, that's probably better.
Yeah. And then the last here from Kartik, his last say here, he said, I'm just afraid they just say, okay, sit on the next plane and go back on the port of entry now. I know why to have a lawyer and know whom to choose. We're here for you, Kartik. We're here for you. Okay, let's finish off with a few other questions here. And let's see if we can get... this is an interesting comment. Jal says, Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program is closing December 31st. I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't heard. Now, it's the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. I can tell you, actually, no, I can. Like I haven't heard of it going away. In fact, in the meetings that I had with IRCC, I think the expectation is that it's going to be expanding. And guys, where's the new immigration minister from? He's from Nova Scotia. This is the Atlantic program. So I'd be surprised. Okay, let's see here. Monsoon says, thanks, Mark, for helping me out with my TRPR process. Now, how can I get my sister here? She doesn't qualify with the requirements of being an orphan or any other of those mentioned on IRCC website. Alicia, you want to tackle this one? This is a tough one for us too.
And I'll just pop over to that Atlantic Immigration Pilot. I do see that there is a information button right now on the website, and it says, as of December 31st, 2021, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot is closing. Provincial endorsements will no longer be issued. If you have a valid provincial certificate of endorsement, you can still apply for permanent residence under the Atlantic Immigration Pilot until March 5th, 2022. The pilot will be replaced with a new program with details to come. So that is on the website.
Great. I'm going to flip this over here. So Atlantic Immigration Pilot. Let's see. I'm not sure which screen you're on where it had that pop up. Maybe
I'll copy it to you here, Mark.
Okay. And just to clarify, what they mean by that is that they're actually making it a permanent program. So it's the pilot is ending because it's a pilot, like any pilot, right? Okay, let's go in here. Alicia's making my life easier. This is why it's so much funner to have more than one person. So you can see here. Oh, do you know what? I know why. I think I've got my pop-ups blocked, maybe. I think that's why.
It's right there, Mark. It's under the photo. Yeah, if you just scroll down.
Oh, there. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So basically you can see here, December 31st, it's closing. The pilot is closing. The pilot, you can see right here, here's the answer, will be replaced with a new program with details to come. So they might be making a few tweaks to it, but yeah, basically they've tested it out. That's what a pilot is. And they've come to the conclusion that, hey, it's worth making a permanent program. So anyone out there this is where it's classic misinformation. Oh, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot is closing. Hire me right now to get your application in before it's too late, right? Like, block those scammers, because it just basically means the program is accomplishing what it was hoped to do, and now they're looking at making it permanent. Okay, we'll finish off with one last question from Lucas. He says,
Oh, and I
once
think,
you make, oh, yep, go ahead.
sorry, we skipped over monsoon winter's question there.
Oh, we never answered the question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So these are always tough situations for siblings, right? Immigration doesn't have an easy way to try to bring siblings to Canada right now. It hasn't for many decades. So there's only a very few regulations where you can bring orphaned family members, depending on, you've got to prove death certificates for both of the parents. So if that doesn't fit, then there are not a lot of good ways to bring in siblings. And unfortunately, as a general rule, the sibling is going to have to qualify on their own for one of a study permit, one of the economic pathways in order to try to come over. They might be able to come over temporarily on a visitor visa, just to be with you part of the time, but these are tough situations if one parent has died but the other parent is still alive.
Excellent. Yeah, we get a lot of those questions for sure. In fact, I have someone who just was referred to me here locally in Lethbridge with the same situation that wants to bring family over. And yeah, the options are really, really limited. Okay, we'll finish with Lucas here. So once you make the cut on the PNP draw, how long approximately does it take for the person to be able to actually go to Canada to stay there? So as far as the cut on the PNP draw, there's two ways of approaching that. So it could be either an express entry stream where you make the cut, or it could be through one of the more traditional streams that are, well, we used to call them paper-based, but there is now an online portal to file them. So how long does it take for the person to be able to actually go to Canada to stay there? Well, the answer's in the processing times, you guys. So you can just shift over. Now, obviously you take them with a grain of salt, because as we always look at this and it says up here, they can't process them normally or give accurate times for most. So we have to try to just guess, but not guess, but you take this as an estimate. So you go to the economic immigration, then you go to provincial nominees, and then it gives you a choice here. So then up here you choose, I'll try to keep it where everybody can see, it says, did you file via express entry? So if it's a stream that is express entry focused, then guess what it's going to say when you click yes? It's going to theoretically say that 6 months for express entry. Remember, that's after the nomination is issued. But if it's a no, it's a different story. Then they say, have you applied already? I haven't applied yet. Then you can see here when you click on get processing times, it's 15 to 19 months. If you say I've already got it in the queue, which is interesting, and you click on it, it says it's actually going to take a little bit longer. So don't get me started on why that is the case, but that's a general, kind of a general guideline for you guys to follow. All right, Alicia, I think it is time for us to wrap things up. It was another great Immigration Live Q&A, and within a short period of time, as soon as we get Alicia set up with her own tech, she's going to drive this ship herself. And I'm here as the individual to basically just play the music, really, and let Alicia take over control of answering the questions. And like I said, the secret to my success with the firm, and I'll point out a couple things here, the secret to the success of my firm is, as I said, hiring people that are smarter than myself. And Alicia and Chanel and Susan all fit into that category. So I might be a smooth talking YouTuber, but the reality is they've got the substance. Turn that music down just a little bit. I also want to let everybody know that next week is when the next immigration express entry DIY course and masterclass starts. So December 6th through the 10th, you can join me, and every evening from 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, you will have basically this group of people that register. And obviously there isn't a large group right now because there haven't been a lot of draws, but there's still time to get into this course. And as I've said repeatedly before, the course itself is pretty good on its own. There's very few things that you're going to miss. But if you want to check out and see what other people's experiences are, you can watch the video, scroll down to the bottom where we've got comments from past alumnus of the course. And I kind of cycle those out with the most recent in there first. So Thanks so much for joining us today, guys. Make sure you get in there. Should be a link in the description below. And remember, any questions that you have, Alicia is here to help. Book those consults. The reason we have lawyers, multiple lawyers, is so that we know you need answers now. And that's one thing we've noticed is people, they book so basically so that they can get an answer within the next couple days. And if I'm full, if she's got space, if Alicia's full, Chanel is there, Susan, so lots of choices. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Alicia, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Mark.